I know. Hollow Knight Silksong is already out. But this challenge had been sitting on my desktop for a long time. And because it was full of highs and lows and it made it more for me than I expected, I decided to finally edit it and upload it. Because honestly, Hollow Knight is still an incredible game. So I thought to myself, why not play through the game one more time? But with a small change, or rather a very big one. What is the challenge, you might ask? Even though Hollow Knight is already one of the hardest games out there, I want to make it even harder. But before I explain the rules of this challenge, let me quickly introduce Hollow Knight for those who might not know it, so you can really understand how difficult this challenge is going to be. If you already know Hollow Knight, you can skip to this timestamp shown in the video. Hollow Knight is a Metroidvania-style platformer where you explore a huge interconnected world, solve puzzles, find upgrades and defeat challenging bosses. What's most important for the challenge, however, is how combat works. The main way to attack enemies in Hollow Knight is with a weapon called the Nail. You can slash enemies directly or poke off them from above, dealing damage that way. There's also a second way to attack, spells. Spells are much stronger attacks, but as the name suggests, they come at a cost. To cast spells, you need Soul. Soul is basically the game's version of mana. Soul can also be used to heal your masks, which are the game's version of health. So, how do you get Soul? It's simple. You gain Soul by damaging enemies with your nail. That's the primary and most reliable way. There are also soul totems and hot springs that can refill soul, but those are rare and scattered across the map, so you can't really rely on them. Which means one thing, the nail is a key item for progressing through Hollow Knight. Without it, the entire combat system starts to fall apart. And with that knowledge in mind, let me explain the rules of the challenge. I'm only allowed to use Vengeful Spirit, I'm not allowed to heal, I'm not allowed to use nail arts, and absolutely no upgrades. This means no extra masks and no extra soul vessels. And I forgot the most important rule. I'm not allowed to use my nail against enemies that drop soul. That means using my nail to hit soul totems is completely fine, but to use my nail against bosses or regular enemies is forbidden. Basically, I'm playing Hollow Knight without a weapon. But I forgot something that I'm allowed to have. I'm allowed to use charms. But is the game even beatable like this? Can you really finish Hollow Knight using only Vengeful Spirit? Whether I manage to do it or not, you find out at the end of the video. And if you want to experience a challenge like this live, feel free to join my live stream on YouTube. But for now, enjoy the video. The challenge started like every playthrough does, in King's Pass. It's a tutorial area where you really can't mess up too much. So I just ran through it, of course without killing any enemies, and the only thing worth mentioning is that I picked up my first charm, Fury of the Fallen. And with the tutorial done, I arrived in Dirtmouth. Of course I talked to Elderbug and sat down at my first bench. Then it was straight into the first area, the Forgotten Crossroads. And after some walking, which you can see right here, I ran straight into the first fight. It wasn't hard, so I defeated it quickly. Wait, no, I can't do that, right? Yeah, I forgot to mention that the challenge only starts once I unlock Vengeful Spirit, because without it, this challenge would be completely impossible. So that means I'm still allowed to fight using my nail for now. So I quickly ran over to Grubmother and defeated her. This is one of the first bosses you have to fight in Hollow Knight, and Grubmother basically locks the way to Salubra, a very important NPC. And because Salubra will become very important later on, I wouldn't be able to reach her anymore if I already had Vengeful Spirit without having beaten Grubmother first. After that I picked up a Grub, but first a quick interlude for those of you who don't know what Grubs are, or who might be wondering why I'm even collecting them in the first place. Grubs are small NPCs hidden throughout the world of Hollow Knight. When you find and rescue them, you can bring them back to the Grubfather who lives in the Forgotten Crossroads. And in return, he usually rewards you with Geo, the game's main currency, which you can see in the top left corner of the screen. And once you've rescued a certain number of Grubs, the Grubfather also gives you items, some of which can be extremely useful for this run. And now for anyone unfamiliar with Geo, Geo, as I already said, is the currency of the game and is used to buy charms and other important items that are essential for our progression. And under normal circumstances, Geo is earned mainly by killing enemies, just like so. And that's exactly where this challenge becomes much harder. Because of the rules, I'm not allowed to kill enemies with my nail, only with soul. And with only 3 spellcasts available before needing to recharge soul, defeating regular enemies consistently just isn't practical. And since recharging soul usually requires hitting enemies in the first place, combat stops being a reliable source of income altogether. That means I effectively have no steady way to earn geo throughout combat. There are a few alternatives like breaking geo deposits or destructible objects that don't grant soul, and I use those whenever possible, but the main source of geo is completely off the table, which makes every grub I rescue incredibly valuable. And in this challenge, grubs aren't just collectibles, they are one of the only reliable sources of geo I have. And geo will become very important in this challenge, because I have to buy very important things with geo. But now let's continue. After collecting the grub, I went straight to the first story boss, the False Knight, to get Vengeful Spirit as quickly as possible. After I defeated him, it is a very easy fight again, I grabbed the city crest and finally unlocked Vengeful Spirit. So now the challenge begins. Nope, sorry to disappoint you, I still have to awkwardly sneak through this bed's tutorial section first, because you have to use the nail there again. But after I finish this section, the challenge finally begins. Now the challenge truly begins, and of course I didn't go into it completely unprepared. After unlocking Vengeful Spirit, the first thing I did was reclaim my shade and open up the path to Salubra and Sly, since I have beaten Grasmother. And from there the plan was simple: collect every grub you can find in the Forgotten Crossroads. Why, you might ask? The goal was to earn enough geo. And something else, but more on that later. So I quickly gathered all of them, as you can see right here, including my first real death, one of many to come. With the geo I had collected up to this point, I made my way back to Salubra to buy the Lifeblood charm. And this is where it becomes clear why Salubra is so important for this challenge. Salubra is the character who sells charms. Now, for those of you who might not know what charms are, I haven't explained them yet, simply because they weren't important until now. Here's a quick overview. Charms are essentially passive upgrades in Hollow Knight. They modify how your character works. Some increase spell damage, others change how soul is generated, or give you additional mask. They don't replace your attacks, they enhance your playstyle. And for this challenge, charms are one of the very few tools I'm actually allowed to use. And that's why Salubra matters so much. She sells these charms, which means she's absolutely essential for this run. The problem is that Salubra is normally only reachable after you get the dash. And the dash is obtained in Green Path after defeating Hornet, and obviously that's not something I can do right now. So normally I shouldn't be able to reach Salubra at all, but I have to. Because Salubra said something that is absolutely critical for making this run possible. So the question becomes, how do you reach Salubra when she's on a raised platform and you don't have the dash? The answer is simple. There's a skip. The skip is actually pretty easy, and most players know this trick already. Salubra is located on a raised platform that you normally can't reach without the dash, and at this point in the game, you don't have dash. But if you let yourself die, return to the area and then poke off your own shade, you can reach her anyway, a trick known as shade skip. But let's continue. The Lifeblood Charmer board gives you 2 extra masks, and I originally wanted to experiment with that, although to be honest, I never really used it at all. I mean, stay until the end to see how this charm eventually helps me. But anyway, looking back, it was probably a bad purchase. I should have bought a different charm instead. After that mispurchase, I went to the Grub Father, mainly for the geo, and a mask shot that I can't use. And with my newly earned geo, I returned to Salubra once again and bought what is probably the most important charm for this entire challenge. Shaman Stone. I also freed Sly while I was at it. But let me quickly explain why Shaman Stone is so important. At this point in the game, you're supposed to head to Green Path to obtain the dash. But to get there, you first have to defeat this enemy. That enemy has 60 points of health, but Vengeful Spirit only deals 15 damage. And with a full soul meter, I can fire 3 shots, and that adds up to 45 damage, which simply isn't enough. And normally you get a 4th cast by hitting smaller enemies to refill your soul, but that's not allowed in our challenge. And here's the key part. Shaman Stone boosts all spells, and with this charm equipped, one shot of Vengeful Spirit deals 20 damage instead of 15. And if you know now simple math, 20 times 3 is 60, which is exactly enough to defeat the enemy and open up the path to Green Path. You see the rhyme? The part I play Green Path can honestly be cut almost entirely, because I simply can't defeat Hornet. And how could I? With only 3 casts of Vengeful Spirit, there's no way to deal enough damage at this point in the game. Still, green path was extremely important for this challenge, because it contains additional grubs. And as I hinted earlier, I wasn't collecting grubs just for the geo. There was another reason, and now is the moment to explain why. Once you rescue 10 grubs, the Grub Father rewards you with the Silksong charm. Its effect is very simple. Whenever you take damage, you gain soul. That means it's a way to generate soul without damaging enemies. And when combined with another charm later on, it would actually give me infinite soul. But again, more on that later. So back to the run. After collecting all the grubs I could find, I ran into another major problem. I only had 9 grubs. That meant I was missing one. And even if I had Silksong, it would probably only give me one extra spellcast against Hornet, and obviously that is not enough. So to progress in the game, I need to somehow reach the Fungal Wastes, get the Mantis Claws and figure things out from there. For those who don't know what the Mantis Claws are, it's wall jump. But the problem? Normally you can only enter the Fungal Wastes with the dash, which I didn't have because I can't defeat Hornet. But luckily I remembered there was a skip you could do with only Vengeful Spirit. And all I had to do was reach Queen Station and perform a Vengeful Spirit skip. The path to Queen Station wasn't very exciting, so I just showed it on the map here. However, after checking the map more closely, I realized that this route didn't actually help me much. All the items I needed, one extra grub, Mantis Claws, were on the other side of Fungal Wastes, completely inaccessible from that entrance. But I still wasn't ready to give up. I searched and searched. There had to be another entrance for the Fungal Wastes. And I found one. One that lets you reach everything you need. But there was a huge problem again. For that entrance, you have to have a dash again. And this time, you can't perform a Vengeful Spirit skip because the gap was way too wide. It almost felt like the game was telling me that the dash was absolutely required and I have to fail this challenge. But someday, I stumbled across a YouTube video by Fireborn, where he demonstrated a Vengeful Spirit skip from exactly that location. You can now see the skip.
Spirit at the perfect spot, and it goes downwards instead of to the side, and then you can pogo off of it immediately after. And that's it, you're into Fungal Wastes from this entrance.
That couldn't have been a coincidence. And luckily I didn't have to constantly run back to a soul totem to refill my soul, because just 10 seconds away there was a hot spring where you can recharge. So I sat down and started practicing the skip. And honestly I don't know how long it took me to finally put it off, but probably around 3 hours. The timing has to be frame perfect, and with the hitboxes combined with all the back and forth movement, all of that costs time. But eventually, finally, I made it. And now I was inside the Fungal Waste, and more importantly in the area where I could reach everything I needed. And the first thing I did was head straight to the nearest bench, because if I died here I'd have to redo the entire skip, and I really didn't want that. So I sat down, saved and took a moment to breathe. Now the plan was to collect the last grub. And all I had to do was go right here. That sounds simple, right? But it really isn't. The grub is hidden pretty far back from that bench. And every time I died, I had to run all the way from the bench again. And because I'm not allowed to kill enemies, I usually didn't arrive there with full health. But eventually, after a few deaths, though, I finally made it there with full mask and quickly rescued the grub. That meant I now had 10 grubs. The first piece of the puzzle. But then I did something incredibly stupid. I walked all the way back to the Forgotten Crossroads, returned to the Grub Father, collected the Silksong charm, of course, and completely forgot to pick up the Mantis Claws. Now a brief interlude from the editing department. Next few minutes will have very bad game audio and I apologize for that. There were some recording issues. I will add some background music. But let's continue. With Silksong now equipped, it was time to head back to the skip. And because I made a huge mistake, I had to do this skip again, so it was time to head back to it. This time it didn't take nearly as long as the first attempt, simply because I was already practiced, so back to the bench once again. And now I need to explain something. Reaching the Mantis Claws without dash is Much harder than you think, but it's possible, unlike reaching dash. Normally, from here, you would enter Mantis Village using the dash, which I don't have. A little rap. So I had to come up with something else. Luckily, I remembered another skip that lets you get from here to the village anyway. You're probably wondering, how? So here's a quick clip. Yeah, this one is rough. And I have to run all the way back from the bench again. On top of that, this skip no longer works in the latest version of the game, which meant I had to downpatch Hollow Knight. And once that was done, it was time to practice again. Surprisingly, I managed to pull it off relatively quickly and finally made it into the village. But there's one small detail I haven't mentioned yet. At this gap, you actually need dash again. Luckily, I had another plan. I attached the kit myself right here, let my shade spawn, performed this skip right again, and tried not to die while doing so, because if I did, I'd have to do everything from scratch. After that, I returned to Mantis Village, performed a shade skip just like before, and finally reached the Mantis Claws. Wall jumps, at last. I know I technically hit this enemy here, but it doesn't actually matter. It didn't help me, the soul gain was insignificant and the enemy didn't even die. I would have poked off my shade anyway, so that I could have crossed the gap without hitting the enemy at all. In the end, it makes no difference. So no rule break. So next up, the Dream Nail. Wait, already? Yes, already. To get there, I simply returned to Celubra, the Charm Lady, and performed this skip using the Mantis Claws. So a little mix-up of Mantis Claws wall jumps and the shade skip. The skip isn't particularly difficult, so I managed to put it off pretty quickly. But stop! Before we continue, some of you might be wondering why I'm even going this way to get the Dream Nail. And yes, there's a reason. If you already know Hollow Knight, well, you can skip ahead. The timestamp is on the screen. But for everyone else, here's a very quick explanation. Through this skip, I end up at Blue Lake, and from there I can reach one of the most important items in the entire game. The Dream Nail. The Dream Nail is a key item in Hollow Knight. Without it, you simply cannot finish the game. And in a normal playthrough, at a certain point in the story you unlock the Dream Nail, which allows you to interact with special characters called the Dreamers. The Dreamers are essentially the guardians of the Black Egg Temple, where the Hollow Knight, the final boss of the game, is sealed away. In total, there are 3 Dreamers, and they are spread across the entire map. Reaching them requires exploration, platforming, challenges, and boss fights. Once you reach a Dreamer, you can use the Dream Nail to free them. And only after all 3 Dreamers are freed does the Black Egg Temple open, and only then you can face the Hollow Knight and complete the game. So, to put it simply, without the Dream Nail, Hollow Knight is not beatable. And that's why picking it up right now is such an important milestone for this challenge. Alright, lesson over, let's get back to the run. Thanks to the skip, you end up at Blue Lake. From there you just keep moving to the right, hit the switch from below, head right again, and you're at the Dream Nail. After briefly checking in on the Dreamers and unlocking them to free them, I finally picked it up. A very important story item. The Dream Nail. But honestly, all of this doesn't really help me if I can't find a way to defeat Hornet or any regular enemy without using my nail. And luckily, there's a way. And it's not far. Let me introduce the Dream Shield. Another piece of the puzzle. The Dream Shield is once again a charm which you can find in the resting grounds where I am right now. This charm spawns a shield that rotates around you, and whenever it hits an enemy, it deals damage without gaining soul, so it doesn't break a rule. And after a short time, the shield recharges and becomes active again. For the first time, I finally had a way to kill enemies without directly attacking them. With that sorted, I traveled from the resting grounds to Green Path using the stack station. The stack station? I never mentioned a stack station. Yeah, you're right. I should probably mention that I bought the stack station there earlier, but I just forgot it. But now I'm here. I'm here in Green Path, and now I have a way to deal damage. It feels like the Dream Shield is the key to finish my challenge, and that's where the first real fight begins. The fight against Hornet and the fight that leads me to Dash. And now I'll stay quiet for this part, play some intense music, cut a little montage, and let enjoy you the fight in its full glory. actually work. After all this effort, I finally managed to get the dash. Now I was only missing one final piece of the puzzle, and that piece was located in deepness. Because I don't want to finish the game with this method of attacking, it takes way too long and is way too boring. So I headed there through the Fungal Wastes. I show you the route on the map right here. And I have to say, I really hate deepness. So whenever deepness is involved, I try to keep things short. So here it is. Once I arrived, my goal was to pick something up and free the first streamer. But after getting lost and dying a few times, I realized that without the Lumafly Lantern, I wouldn't get anywhere. I just couldn't see anything, and I just keep dying. So I turned around and headed back. The Lumafly Lantern lights up dark areas, basically like the flash gem in Pokemon. It costs 1800 Geo, and as you can see, I'm nowhere near having that much. So I had to somehow figure out a way to earn enough Geo, without killing any enemies. I broke every Geo deposit I could find and collected everything possible, because getting large amounts of Geo without killing enemies is actually pretty difficult. At the beginning of this challenge I never thought this would be a problem where I can't continue my challenge. At that point I decided to look for Geo elsewhere, and at the same time continue progressing the story, since I can now free the dreamers. So I headed to the resting grounds. You might be wondering why. Here's the quick answer. From the resting grounds you can enter the City of Tears, and more importantly you enter it from the side where you actually reach everything, unlike the entrance from the Fungal Wastes. I show you the path on the map here. Once inside the City of Tears I didn't do much at first, because with my current setup I wasn't ready to fight the Watch Knights, the boss that you have to defeat to get to the Dreamer. Instead I focused on collecting Grub, opening paths and gathering Geo. And that's when I realized how to earn a lot of Geo. In the city there's an NPC who buys certain items in exchange for Geo. So all I really needed was a combination of items like Hollow Knight Seals, King Idols or Arcane Eggs. You can see the prices of these items. You get the idea. And they needed this amount of Geo, so I decided to go for 4 Hollow Knight Seals, simply because they are much easier to find and faster to collect at this point. I did try to go for other items as well, but those were located in areas that would have been much harder to reach under these challenge routes. And I won't show every single path I took, instead I just show you how I collected all the items. You can believe me, I did not cheat. Hollow Knight Seeds are very easy to get. And once I had everything, I went back to the merchant, sold it all, and finally had enough Geo to buy the lantern. So all that was left was to go to Sly and Dirtmouth, the one I freed, remember, and buy it. Sounds simple, yeah? And no problems? Yeah, and that's exactly what I did. And with Lumafly Lantern now in my inventory, nothing was stopping me to invade Deepnest. I had everything I needed to collect the final piece of the puzzle, unlock the last ability, and finish the game. And now it begins. The challenge is slowly coming to an end, and I want to start with the place I hate the most. That's right, Deepnest. So I made my way through the Forgotten Crossroads into the Fungal Wastes, and from there straight into Deepnest, the same route I used earlier. As I've said before, I really don't like Deepnest, so I keep this part short. I avoided most enemies because there wasn't much else I could do. I died a few times along the way, but eventually made it to this location. Why here? Simple. This is Weaver's Den, and it contains one of the most important charms of the entire challenge. Weaver's Song, the final piece of the puzzle. Finally. But what does the charm do? This charm summons small Weaverlings, little spider companions that attack enemies for me and deal small amounts of damage. But that's not even the best part. When combined with Grub Song, which you might remember, every hit from the Weaverlings generates soul. That means with this charm combination, which luckily only takes up 3 charm notches, that is the start setup of the game, so I got lucky there, I now have infinite soul. And with infinite soul I can defeat any enemy with having fun. All I have to do now is to dodge. Something I've practiced plenty during this challenge. After picking it up, I intentionally killed myself, on purpose, just so I could equip the new charm combination. Now the only thing left tying me to this place was the Dreamer. I will skip the path to the Dreamer because, be serious, nobody wants to see more of Deepnest, so I will just show some deaths instead. And after that, all that's left out is to sit down on this bench, surrounded by these extremely friendly creatures. And then you should be there. Oh, I like the... Wait, what are they doing? Alright, jokes aside. Once inside the beast's den, all I had to do was climb upward, defeat the giant spiders, using my new ultimate setup, and free the first dreamer. That's 1 out of 3. And finally, I was done with Deep Nest. Next stop, Fog Canyon. The second dreamer is in Fog Canyon, but before I could get there, I needed one last ability. Because normally you need Isma's Tear or Shade Cloak to reach this area, and I had neither of those. However, I could get my hands on Crystal Dash, but if I need Isma's Tear or Shade Cloak, why am I going to get Crystal Dash? I share you right now. So I quickly picked it up. I will completely skip Crystal Peak because nothing interesting happens there aside from collecting Crystal Dash. The path is not exciting, there are no real enemies, no boss fights, just jump and run. So I just show you how I collect Crystal Dash. And with the new ability unlocked, all I had to do was go here. Jump onto the wall, activate Crystal Dash, and at the right moment perform a wall jump. And just like that, I was through. It sounds easier than it is, but after some practice I did it. And I don't think this skip is intended, but if you can do it, why not? And now I was on the correct side, where I could reach Umu without any problems. No Isma's Tear or no Shade Cloak. Some late game abilities I can't collect. And with it, the next dreamer. Here I'm at Umu, the boss fight who protects the second dreamer. I show you the route on the map here. You already know the strategy. Dodge, survive, let the spiders do their work, get some soul and occasionally hit with Vengeful Spirit. And that's basically the entire fight. I died a few times, I don't deal much damage, and with only 5 masks it's pretty tough. The fight took around 10 minutes and keeping focus for that long is honestly exhausting. Still, after a few attempts, okay, I will be real here, it didn't take a few attempts, it took like 2 to 3 hours, and I think Umu is now my new most hated boss. But I finally managed to beat it and free the next dreamer with some help from Kuril. I wanted to mention him again because he's genuinely helpful in this fight and I really like this character. And that means there's only one dreamer left, and after that the Hollow Knight, and then I completed this challenge. I really can't believe it. The endgame starts. One last dreamer and then I completed this challenge. And you probably already know where the last dreamer is if you have listened carefully because I already mentioned him. But for those of you who forgot it, it's located here in the City of Tears. More specifically in the Watcher's Spire. So to speed some things up, I took the stack station to the City of Tears and headed straight for the Watcher's Spire. The path itself isn't very exciting, you just have to flip a switch and you're at the elevator leading up to the Watcher Knights, the boss who protects the last dreamer. Of course, I took one of them out using the Chandelier and then went straight into the fight. The fight didn't take very long. Again, it's just dodging while my setup is working, hitting some Watcher Knights with the Vengeful Spirit. And I have to say, this boss fight is one of the more easier ones, so after a few attempts I cleared it. And once they were defeated, it was just one more elevator ride up, and there I was, standing in front of the final dreamer. I entered, freed the dreamer, and you know what that means. Nothing was standing in my way anymore. The only thing left was to finish the game. Just the path to him remains, the Hollow Knight. I will skip the journey there for you. So now, here I am. Standing before the Black Egg Temple, standing before the final challenge. Throughout this run, I faced countless obstacles. There were moments where I genuinely wanted to give up, whether it was finding a path to the Fungal Wastes, getting the Mantis Claws, surviving the horrors of Deep Nest, or pushing through the boss fights. But in the end, I managed to overcome every single obstacle. And I'm going to overcome this final one as well. So now I'll play a short montage with some intense music, and the only thing I can say is enjoy. And I did it. To be honest, the fight isn't very hard for a boss fight, but I did it. I completed Hollow Knight using only Vengeful Spirit, without using the nail against enemies, without using spells except for Vengeful Spirit. With the start setup, I really did it. Honestly, I didn't think I'd be able to pull this off, but somehow I actually did. And I think that definitely earns me a sub. No, I'm serious. Please subscribe to my channel. This challenge and the video took way longer than I expected. So if you liked the video, please like the video. And again, please subscribe. Then let me know in the comments which game I should attempt next with a challenge run like this. I prefer Hollow Knight Silksong. Write down the challenge and the game and maybe I will do it. I'm very open. But the last and only thing I can say is thank you for watching, and someday I hope to see you back on my channel. Bye.